Hello everyone. We're gonna do another blog. Yes. I'm in a different position because this yoga ball is taking up my usual seating, and I kind of don't want to disturb the yoga ball. Somehow it's gotten into my mind that this yoga ball might be sentient and might be out to kill me if I move it. I don't know why. Okay. Alright, let's do chapter 20. Did I do chapter 20? I don't remember reading this, but no, I don't think I did chapter 20. Okay, let's go. I'll do 2 chapters. Chapter 20, Log Entry Soul 376. I'm finally done with the rover modifications. The tricky part was figuring out how to maintain life support. Everything else was just work, a lot of work. I haven't been good at keeping the log up to date, so here's a recap. First, I had to finish drilling holes with the Pathfinder murder and drill. Then I chiseled out like a billion little chunks between the holes. Okay, it was 7:59, but it felt like a billion. Then I had one big hole in the trailer. I filed down the edges to keep them from being too sharp. Remember the pop tents? I cut the bottom out of one and used the remaining canvas. I cut the bottom out of one, and the remaining canvas was the right size and shape. I used seal strips to attach it to the inside of the trailer. After pressurizing and sealing up leaks as I found them, I had a nice big balloon bulging out of the trailer. The pressurized area is easily big enough to fit the oxygenator and atmospheric regulator. One hitch: I need to put the AREC outside. The imaginatively named atmospheric regulator external component is how the regulator freeze separates air. Why sink a bunch of energy into freezing stuff when you have incredibly cold temperatures right outside? The regulator pumps air to the AREC to let Mars freeze it. It does this along a tube that runs through a valve in the HAB's wall. The return air comes back through another tube just like it. Getting the tubing through the balloon canvas wasn't too hard. I have several spare valve patches. Basically, they're 10 by 10 centimeter patches of hob canvas with a valve in the middle. Why do I have these? Consider what would happen on a normal mission if the regulator valve broke. They'd have to scrub the whole mission. Easier to send spares. The AREC is fairly small. I made a shelf for it just under the solar panel shelves. Now everything's ready for when I eventually move the regulator and AREC over. There's still a lot to do. I'm not in any hurry. I've been taking it slow. 1 4-hour EVA per day spent on work, the rest of the time to relax in the hob. Plus, I'll take a day off every now and then, especially if my back hurts. I can't afford to injure myself now. I'll try to be better about this log. Now that I might actually get rescued, people will probably read it. I'll be more diligent and log every day. Hold on, we just skipped 100 days. I was flipping back to the pages, and the last log was around 211. What the fuck? Bro, that can't be right. Log entry Soul 380. I finished the heat reservoir. Remember my experiments with the RTG and having a hot bath? Same principle, but I came up with an improvement. Submerge the RTG. No heat will be wasted that way. I started with a large rigid sample container, or plastic box, to people who don't work at NASA. I ran a tube through the open top and down the inside wall. Then I coiled it in the bottom to make a spiral. I glued it in place like that and sealed the end. Using my smallest drill bit, I put dozens of little holes in the coil. The idea is for the freezing return air from the regulator to pass through the water as a bunch of little bubbles. The increased surface area will get the heat into the air better. Then I got a medium flexible sample container or Ziploc bag and tried to seal the RTG in it. But the RTG has an irregular shape and I couldn't get all the air out of the bag. I can't allow any air in there. Instead of heat going to the water, some would get stored in the air, which could superheat and melt the bag. I tried a bunch of times, but there was always an air pocket I couldn't get out. I was getting pretty frustrated until I remembered I have an airlock. Suiting up, I went to airlock 2 and depressurized to a full vacuum. I plopped the RTG in the bag and closed it. Perfect vacuum seal. Next came some testing. I put the bagged RTG at the bottom of the container and filled it with water. It holds 20 liters and the RTG quickly heated it. It was gaining a degree per minute. I let it go until it was a good 40 degrees Celsius. Then I hooked up the regulator's return air line to my contraption and watched the results. It worked great. The air bubbled through just like I'd hoped. Even better, the bubbles agitated the water, which distributed the heat evenly. I let it run for an hour and the hob started to get cold. The RTG's heat can't keep up with the total loss from the hob's impressive surface area. Not a problem. I've already established it's plenty to keep the rover warm. I reattached the return airline to the regulator and things got back to normal. Log entry Sol 381. I've been thinking about laws on Mars. Yeah, I know, it's a stupid thing to think about, but I have a lot of free time. There's an international treaty saying no country can lay claim to anything that's not on Earth. And by another treaty, if you're not in any country's territory, maritime law applies. So Mars is international waters. NASA is an American non-military organization and it owns the Hob. So while I'm in the Hob, American law applies. As soon as I step outside, I'm in international waters. Then when I get into the rover, I'm back to American law. Here's the cool part. I will eventually go to Schiaparelli and commandeer the Ares 4 lander. Nobody explicitly gave me permission to do this, and they can't until I'm aboard Ares 4 and operating the comm system. After I board Ares 4 before talking to NASA, I will take control of a craft in international waters without permission. That makes me a pirate. A space pirate. Log entry Sol 383. You may be wondering what else I do with my free time. I spend a lot of it sitting around on my lazy butt watching TV. But so do you, so don't judge. I don't. Shut the fuck up. Also, I planned my trip. Pathfinder was a cake run. Flat, level ground all the way. The only problem was navigating, but the trip to Schiaparelli will mean going over massive elevation changes. I have a rough satellite map of the whole planet. It doesn't have much detail, but I'm lucky to have it all. NASA doesn't expect me to wander 3,200 kilometers from the Hob. Acidalia Planitia, where I am, has a relatively low elevation. So does Schiaparelli, but between them goes up and down by 10 kilometers. There's going to be a lot of dangerous driving. Things will be smooth while I'm in Acidalia, but that's the first 650 kilometers. After that comes the crater-riddled terrain of Arabia Terra. I do have one thing going for me, and I swear it's a gift from God. For some geological reason, there's a valley called Marth Vallis that's perfectly placed. Millions of years ago, it was a river. Now it's a valley that juts into the brutal terrain of Arabia, almost directly towards Schiaparelli. It's much gentler terrain than the rest of Arabia Terra, and the far end looks like a smooth ascent out of the valley. Between Acidalia and Marth Vallis, I'll get 1,350 kilometers of relatively easy terrain. The other 1,850 kilometers, well, that won't be so nice, especially when I have to descend into Schiaparelli itself. Ugh. Anyways, Marth Vallis, awesome. More like Meowth Vallis. Oh yeah, and Team Rocket, Meowth Vallis. Yeah, that works. Yeah, we should change that name. Log entry Sol 385. The worst part of the Pathfinder trip was being trapped in the rover. I had to live in a cramped environment that was full of junk and reeked of body odor, same as my college days. Seriously though, it sucked. It was 22 souls of abject misery. I planned to leave for Schiaparelli 100 souls before my rescue, and I swore I'll rip off my own face if I have to live in the rover for that long. I need a place to stay where I can stand up and take a few steps without hitting things. And no, being outside in a claustrophobic EVA suit doesn't count. I need personal space, not 50 kilograms of clothing. So today I started making a tent, somewhere I can relax while the batteries recharge, somewhere I can lie down comfortably while sleeping. I recently sacrificed one of my 2 pop tents to be the trailer balloon, but the other is in perfect shape. Even better, it has an attachment for the rover's airlock. Before I made it a potato farm, its original purpose was to be a lifeboat for the rover. I could attach the pop tent to either vehicle's airlock. I'm going with the rover instead of the trailer. The rover has the computer and controls. If I need to know the status of anything, like life support or how well the battery is recharging, I'll need access. This way, I'll be able to walk right in, no EVA. Also, while traveling, I'll keep the tent folded up in the rover. In an emergency, I can get to it fast. The pop tent is the basis of my bedroom, but not the whole thing. The tent's not very big, not much more space than the rover, but it has the airlock attachment, so it's a great place to start. My plan is to double the floor area and double the height. That'll give me a nice big space to relax in. For the floor, I'll use the original flooring material from the 2 pop tents. If I didn't, my bedroom would become a big hamster ball because hob canvas is flexible. When you fill it with pressure, it wants to become a sphere. That's not a useful shape. To combat this, the hub and pop tents have special flooring material. It unfolds as a bunch of little segments that won't open beyond 180 degrees, so it remains flat. The pop tent base is a hexagon. I have another base left over from what is now the trailer balloon. When I'm done, the bedroom will become two adjacent hexes with walls around them, and a crude ceiling. It's gonna take a lot of glue to make this happen. Log entry Sol 387. The pop tent is 1.2 meters tall. It's not made for comfort. It's made for astronauts to cower in while their crewmates rescue them. I want 2 meters. I want to be able to stand. I don't think that's too much to ask. On paper, it's not hard to do. I just need to cut canvas pieces to the right shapes, seal them together, and then seal them to the existing canvas and flooring. But that's a lot of canvas. I started this mission with 6 square meters, and I've used up most of that, mostly on sealing the breach from when the hob blew up. Anyways, my bedroom will take 30 square meters of the stuff, way more than I have left. Fortunately, I have an alternate supply of hob canvas, the hob itself. Problem is, if I cut a hole in the hob, the air won't stay inside anymore. I'll have to depressurize the hob, cut chunks out, and put it back together and smaller. I spent today figuring out the exact sizes and shapes of canvas I need. I need not to screw this up, so I triple-checked everything. I even made a model out of paper. The hob is a dome. If I take canvas from near the floor, I can pull the remaining canvas. My GroupMe notification is glitching the fuck out because it's repeating the same notification over and over and over again. The hob is a dome. If I take canvas from near the floor, I can pull the remaining canvas down and reseal it. The hob will become a lopsided dome, but that shouldn't matter, as long as it holds pressure. I only need it to last another 62 sols. I drew the shapes on the wall with a Sharpie. Then I spent a long time remeasuring them and making sure over and over that they were right. That was all I did today. Might not seem like much, but the math and design work took all day. Now it's time for dinner. I've been eating potatoes for weeks. Theoretically, with my 3/4 ration plan, I should still be eating food packs, but 3/4 ration is hard to maintain, so now I'm eating potatoes. I have enough to last till launch, so I won't starve. but I'm pretty sick of potatoes. Also, they have a lot of fiber. So let's just say it's good I'm the only guy on this planet. I saved 5 meal packs for special occasions. I wrote their names on each one. I get to eat departure the day I leave for Schiaparelli. I'll eat halfway when I reach the 1600-kilometer mark, and arrival once I get there. The 4th one is survived something that should have killed me because something will happen, I just know it. I don't know what it'll be, but it'll happen. The rover will break down, or I'll come down with fatal hemorrhoids, or I'll run into hostile Martians, or some other crap. When I do, I get to eat that meal pack. The 5th one is reserved for the day I launch. It's labeled Last Meal. Maybe that's not such a good name. Log entry Sol 388. I started the day with a potato. I washed it down with some Martian coffee. That's my name for hot water with a caffeine pill dissolved in it. I ran out of real coffee months ago. My first order of business was a careful inventory of the hob. I needed to root out anything that would have a problem with losing atmospheric pressure. Of course, everything in the hob has a crash course in depressurizing a few months back. But this time would be controlled, and I might as well do it right. Oh, everything in the hob had a crash course in depressurization. That was when the hob blew up. Okay. The main thing is the water. I lost 300 liters to sublimation when the hob blew up. This time, that won't happen. I drained the water reclaimer and sealed off all the tanks. The rest was just collecting knickknacks and dumping them in airlock 3. Anything I could think of that doesn't do well in a near vacuum. All the pens, vitamin bottles, medical supplies, etc. Then I did a controlled shutdown of the hob. The critical components are designed to survive a vacuum. Hob depress is one of the many scenarios NASA accounted for. One system at a time, I cleanly shut them all down, ending with the main computer itself. I suited up and depressurized the hob. Last time, the canvas collapsed and made a mess of everything. That's not supposed to happen. The dome of the hob is mostly supported by air pressure, but there are flexible reinforcing poles along the inside to hold up the canvas. It's how the hob was assembled in the first place. I watched as the canvas gently settled onto the poles. To confirm the depressurization, I opened both doors of airlock 2. I left airlock 3 alone. It maintained pressure for its cargo of random crap. Then I cut things up. I'm not a materials engineer. My design for the bedroom isn't elegant. It's just a 6-meter perimeter and a ceiling. No, it won't have right angles and corners. It'll balloon out to a more round shape. Anyways, it means I only needed to cut 2 big strips of canvas. One for the walls and one for the ceiling. After mangling the hob, I pulled the remaining canvas down to the flooring and resealed it. Ever set up a camping tent from the inside while wearing a suit of armor? It was a pain in the ass. I repressurized the 1/20th of an atmosphere to see if it could hold pressure. Ha ha ha, of course it couldn't. Leaks galore, time to find them. On Earth, tiny particles that get attached to water or wear down to nothing. On Mars, they just hang around. The top layer of sand is like talcum powder. I went outside with a bag and scraped along the surface. I got some normal sand, but plenty of powder too. I had the hob maintain the 1/20th atmosphere, backfilling as air leaked out. Then I puffed the bag to get the smallest particles to float around. They were quickly drawn to where the leaks were. As I found each leak, I spot sealed it with resin. It took hours, but I finally got a good seal. I'll tell you, the hob looks pretty ghetto now. One whole side of it is lower than the rest. I'll have to hunch down when I'm over there. I pressurized to a full atmosphere and waited an hour. No leaks. It's been a long, physically taxing day. I'm totally exhausted, but I can't sleep. Every sound scares the crap out of me. Is that the hob popping? No? Okay. What was that? Oh, nothing? Okay. It's a terrible thing to have my life depend on my incompetent handiwork. Time to get a sleeping pill from the medical supplies. They have sleeping pills? Log entry Sol 389. What the hell is in those sleeping pills? It's the middle of the day. After 2 cups of Martian coffee, I woke up a little. I won't be taking another one of those pills. It's not like I have to go to work in the morning. Anyways, as you can tell from how not dead I am, the hob stayed sealed overnight. The seal is solid. Ugly as hell, but solid. Today's task was the bedroom. Assembling the bedroom was way easier than resealing the hob, because this time I didn't have to wear an EVA suit. I made the whole thing inside the hob. Why not? It's just canvas. I can roll it up and take it out and airlock when I'm done. First, I did some surgery on the remaining pop tent. I needed to keep the rover airlock connector and surrounding canvas. The rest of the canvas had to go. Why hack off most of the canvas only to replace it with more canvas? Seams. NASA is good at making things. I am not. The dangerous part of their structure won't be the canvas, it'll be the seams, and I get less total seam length by not trying to use the existing pop tent canvas. After hacking away most of the remaining tent, I seal stripped the 2 pop tent floors together. Then I sealed the new canvas pieces into place. It was so much easier without the EVA suit on, so much easier. Then I had to test it, again. I did it in the hob. I brought an EVA suit into the tent with me and I closed the mini airlock door. Then I fired up the EVA suit, leaving the helmet off. I told it to bump the pressure up to 1.2 atmospheres. It took me a little while to bring it up to par, and I had to disable some alarms on the suit. It depleted most of the N2 tank, but was finally able to bring up the pressure. Then I sat around and waited. I breathed. The suit regulated the air. All was well. I watched the suit readouts carefully to see if it had replaced any lost air. After an hour with no noticeable change, I declared the first tent a success. I rolled up the whole thing and took it out to the rover. You know, I suit up a lot these days. I bet that's another record I hold. A typical Martian astronaut does, 40 EVAs? I've done several hundred. Once I brought the bedroom to the rover, I attached it to the airlock from the inside. Then I pulled the release to let it loose. I was still wearing my EVA suit because I'm not an idiot. The bedroom fired out and filled in 3 seconds. The open airlock hatchway led directly to it, and it appeared to be holding pressure. Just like before, I let it sit for an hour. And just like before, it worked great. Unlike the hob canvas resealing, I got this one right on the first try. Mostly because I didn't have to do it with the damn EVA suit on. Originally, I planned to let my bedroom sit overnight and check on it in the morning, but I ran into a problem. I can't get out if I do that. The rover has only one airlock and the bedroom was attached to it. There's no way for me to get out without detaching the bedroom, and no way to attach and pressurize the bedroom without being inside the rover. It's a little scary. The first time I test the thing overnight will be with me in it, but that'll be later. I've done enough today. Log entry Sol 390. I have to face facts. I'm done prepping the rover. I don't feel like I'm done, but it's ready to go. Food, 1692 potatoes, vitamin pills. Water, 620 liters. Shelter, rover trailer bedroom. Air, rover and trailer combined storage, 14 liters of liquid O2, 14 liters of liquid N2. Life support, oxygenator and atmospheric regulator, 418 hours of use and discard CO2 filters for emergencies. Power, 36 kilowatt hours of storage, carrying capacity for 29 solar cells. Heat, 1400 watt RTG, homemade reservoir to heat regulators return air, electric heater in rover as a backup. Disco, lifetime supply. I'm leaving here on Sol 449. Gee whiz, that's a long time leave. That gives me 59 sols to test everything and fix whatever isn't working right. Then decide what's coming in with me and what's staying behind. And plot a route to Schiaparelli using a grainy satellite map and rack my brains trying to think of anything important I forgot. Since Sol 6, all I wanted to do was get out of here. Now the prospect of leaving the hob behind scares the crap out of me. I need some encouragement. I need to ask myself, what would an Apollo astronaut do? He'd drink 3 whiskey sours, drive his Corvette to the launch pad, then fly to the moon in a command module smaller than my rover. Man, those guys were cool. smaller than his rover. Alright, that was chapter 20. Now we're on to chapter 21. Log entry Sol 431. I'm working out how to pack. It's harder than it sounds. I have two pressure vessels, the rover and the trailer. They're connected by hoses, but they're also not stupid. If one loses pressure, the other will instantly seal off the shared lines. There's a grim logic to this. If the rover breaches, I'm dead. No point in planning around that. But if the trailer breaches, I'll be fine. That means I should put everything important in the rover. Everything that goes in the trailer has to be comfortable in near vacuum and freezing temperatures. Not that I anticipate that, but plan for the worst. The saddlebags I made for the Pathfinder trip will come in handy for food storage. I can't just store potatoes in the rover or trailer. They'd rot in the warm, pressurized environment. I'll keep some in the rover for easy access, but the rest will be outside in the giant freezer that is this planet. The trailer will be packed pretty tight. It'll have two bulky hob batteries, the atmospheric regulator, the oxygenator, and my homemade heat reservoir. It would be more convenient to have the reservoir in the rover, but it has to be near the regulator's return air feed. The rover will be pretty packed too. When I'm driving, I'll keep the bedroom folded up near the airlock, ready for emergency egress. Also, I'll have the two functional EVA suits in there with me and anything that might be needed for emergency repairs. Toolkits, spare parts, my nearly depleted supply of sealant, the other rover's main computer, just in case, and all 620 glorious liters of water. And a plastic box to serve as a toilet, one with a good lid. And then there's a break. How is Watney doing? Venkat asked. Mindy looked up from her computer with a start. Dr. Kapoor? I hear you caught a picture of him during an EVA. Yeah, Mindy said, typing on her keyboard. I noticed things would always change around 9 a.m. local time. People usually keep the same pattern, so I figured he likes to start work around then. I did some minor realignment to get 17 picks between 9 and 9:10. He showed up in one of them. Good thinking. Can I see the pic? Sure, she brought up the image on her screen. Venkat peered at the blurry image. Is this as good as it gets? Well, it is a photo taken from orbit, Mindy said. The NSA enhanced the image with the best software they have. Wait, what? Venkat stammered. The NSA? Yeah, they called and offered to help us out. Same software they use for enhancing spy satellite imagery. Venkat shrugged. It's amazing how much red tape gets cut when everyone's rooting for one man to survive. He pointed to the screen. What's Watney doing here? I think he's loading something onto the rover. When was the last time he worked on the trailer? Venkat asked. Not for a while. Why doesn't he write us notes more often? Venkat shrugged. He's busy. He works most of the daylight hours, and arranging rocks to spell a message takes time and energy. So, Mindy said, why'd you come here in person? We could have done all this over email. Actually, I came to talk to you, he said. There's going to be a change in your responsibilities. From now on, instead of managing the satellites around Mars, your sole responsibility is watching Mark Watney. What? Mindy said. What about course corrections and alignment? We'll assign that to other people, Venkat said. From now on, your only focus is examining imagery of Ares 3. That's demotion, Mindy said. I'm an orbital engineer, and you're turning me into a glorified peeping Tom. It's short term, Venkat said, and we'll make it up to you. Thing is, you've been doing it for months, and you're an expert at identifying elements of Ares 3 from satellite pics. We don't have anyone else who can do that. Why is this so important? He's running out of time, Venkat said. We don't know how long he is on the rover modifications, but we do know he's only got 16 sols to get them done. We need to know exactly what he's doing. I've got media outlets and senators asking for his status all the time. The president even called me a couple of times. But seeing his status doesn't help, Mindy said. It's not like we can do anything about it if he falls behind. This is a pointless task. How long have you worked for the government? Venkat sighed. Yeah, because everything's a pointless task there. Woohoo! Woo, I love burns against the government. Woohoo. Okay. Log entry Soul 434. The time has come to test this baby out. This presents a problem. Unlike on my Pathfinder trip, I have to take vital life support elements out of the hob if I'm going to do a real dry run. When you take the atmospheric regulator and oxygenator out of the hob, you're left with a tent, a big round tent that can't support life. It's not as risky as it seems. As always, the dangerous part about life support is managing carbon dioxide. When the air gets to 1% CO2, you start getting symptoms of poisoning. So I need to keep the hob's mix below that. The hob's internal volume is about 120,000 liters. Breathing normally, it would take me over 2 days to bring the CO2 level up to 1%. So it's safe to move the regulator and oxygenator over for a while. Both are way too big to fit through the trailer airlock. Luckily for me, they came to Mars with some assembly required. They were too big to send whole, so they're easy to dismantle. Over several trips, I moved all of their chunks to the trailer. I brought each chunk in through the airlock once at a time. It was a pain in the butt reassembling them inside, let me tell you. There's barely enough room for all the crap the trailers got to hold. There wasn't even much left for our intrepid hero. Oh, that's himself. Then I got the AREC. It sat outside like an AC unit might on Earth. In a way, that's what it is. I hauled it over to the trailer and lashed it to the shelf I'd made for it. Then I hooked it up to the feed lines that led through the balloon to the inside of the trailer's pressure vessel. The regulator needs to send air to the AREC, then the return air needs to bubble through the heat reservoir. The regulator also needs a pressure tank to contain the CO2 it pulls from the air. When gutting the trailer to make room, I left one tank in place for this. It's supposed to hold oxygen, but a tank's a tank. Thankfully, all the airlines and valves are standardized across the mission. That's no mistake. It was a deliberate decision to make field repairs easier. Once I had the AREC in place, I hooked up the oxygenator and regulator into the trailer's power and watched them power up. I ran through both diagnostics to confirm they were working correctly. Then I shut down the oxygenator. Remember, I'll only use it one soul out of every 5. I moved to the rover, which meant I had to do an annoying 10-meter EVA. From there, I monitored the life support situation. It's worth noting that I can't monitor the actual support equipment from the rover, but the rover can tell me all about the air. Oxygen, CO2, temperature, humidity, everything. Everything seemed okay. After getting back into the EVA suit, I released a canister of CO2 into the rover's air. I watched the rover computer have a fit when it saw the CO2 spike to lethal levels. Then, over time, the levels dropped to normal. The regulator was doing its job. Good boy. I left the equipment running when I returned to the hub. It'll be on its own all night, and I'll need to check on it in the morning. It's not a true test, because I'm not there to breathe up all the oxygen and make CO2, but one step at a time. Log entry Soul 435. Last night was weird. I knew logically that nothing bad would happen in just one night, but it was a little unnerving to know I had no life support other than heaters. My life depended on some math I'd done earlier. If I dropped a sign or added 2 numbers wrong, I might never wake up. But I did wake up, and the main computer showed the slight rise in CO2 I had predicted. Looks like I'll live another soul. I checked up on the rover. Everything was fine. If I don't drive it, a single charge of the batteries could keep the regulator going for over a month. It's a pretty good safety margin to have. If all hell breaks loose on my trip, I'll have time to fix things. I'll be limited by oxygen consumption rather than CO2 removal, and I have plenty of oxygen. I decided it was a good time to test the bedroom. I got in the rover and attached the bedroom to the outer airlock door from the inside. Like I mentioned before, this is the only way to do it. Then I turned it loose on an unsuspecting Mars. As intended, the pressure from the rover blasted the canvas outward and inflated it. After that chaos, the sudden pressure popped the bedroom like a balloon. It quickly deflated, leaving both itself and the rover devoid of air. I was wearing my EVA suit at the time. I'm not an idiot. I dragged the popped bedroom into the hob and gave it a good going over. It failed at the seam where the wall met the ceiling. Makes sense. It's a right angle in a pressure vessel. Physics hates that sort of thing. First, I patched it up. Then I cut strips of spare canvas to place over the seam. Now it has double thickness and double sealing resin all around. Maybe that'll be enough. At this point, I'm kind of guessing. My amazing botany skills aren't much use for this. I'll test it again tomorrow. Log entry Sol 436. I'm out of caffeine pills. No more Martian coffee for me. So it took a little longer for me to wake up this morning, and I quickly developed a splitting headache. One nice thing about living in a multi-billion-dollar mansion on Mars, access to pure oxygen. For some reason, a high concentration of O2 will kill most headaches. Don't know why, don't care. The important thing is I don't have to suffer. I tested out the bedroom again. I suited up in the rover and released the bedroom, same as last time. But this time it held. That's great, but having seen the fragile nature of my handiwork, I wanted a good, long test of the pressure seal. After a few minutes standing around in my EVA suit, I decided to make better use of my time. I may not be able to leave the rover or bedroom universe while the bedroom is attached to the airlock, but I can stay in the rover and close the door. Once I did that, I took off the uncomfortable EVA suit. The bedroom was on the other side of the airlock door, still fully pressurized, so I'm still running my test, but I don't have to wear the EVA suit. I arbitrarily picked 8 hours for the test duration, so I was trapped in the rover until then. I spent my time planning the trip. There wasn't much to add to what I already knew. I'll beeline out of Acidalia Planitia to Meowth Vallis, then follow the valley until it ends. It'll take me on a zigzag route, which will dump me into Arabia Terra. After that, things get rough. Unlike Acidalia Planitia, Arabia Terra is riddled with craters, and each crater represents 2 brutal elevation changes. First down, then up. I did my best to find the shortest path around them. I'm sure I'll have to adjust the course when I'm actually driving it. No plan survives first contact with the enemy. There's a break. Mitch took his seat in the conference room. The usual gang was present. Teddy, Venk, Venkat, Mitch and Annie. But this time there was also Mindy Park, as well as a man Mitch had never seen before. "What's up, Venk?" Mitch asked. "Why the sudden meeting?" "We've got some developments," Venkat said. "Mindy, why don't you bring them all up to date?" Yeah, Mindy said. "Looks like Watney finished the balloon addition to the trailer. It mostly uses the design we sent him." "Any idea how stable it is?" Teddy asked. "Pretty stable," she said. "It's been inflated for several days with no problems. Also, he built some kind of room." "Room?" Teddy asked. "It's made of hot canvas, I think," Mindy explained. "It attaches to the rover's airlock. I think he cut a section out of the hob to make it. I don't know what it's for." Teddy turned to Venkat. "Why would he do that?" "We think it's a workshop," Venkat said. "There will be a lot of work to do on the MAB once he gets the shop ready. It'll be easier without an EVA suit. He probably plans to do as much as he can in that room." "Clever," Teddy said. "Wani's a clever guy," Mitch said. "How about getting life support in there?" "I think he's done it," Mindy said. "He moved the AREC." "Sorry," Annie interrupted. "What's an AREC?" "It's the external component of the atmospheric regulator," Mindy said. "It sits outside the hob, so I saw when it disappeared. He probably mounted it on the rover. There's no other reason to move it, so I'm guessing he's got life support online." Awesome, Mitch said. Things are coming together. Don't celebrate yet, Mitch, Venkat said. He gestured to the newcomer. This is Randall Carter, one of our Martian meteorologists. Martian meteorologists? Do they broadcast that at the same time as the Earth meteorologists? I guess they do, since Mark is so fucking popular now. Randall, tell them what you told me. Randall nodded. Thank you, Dr. Kapoor. He turned his laptop around to show a map of Mars. Over the past few weeks, a dust storm has been developing in Arabia Terra. Not a big deal in terms of magnitude. It won't hinder his driving at all. So what's the problem? Annie asked. It's a low-velocity dust storm, Randall explained. Slow winds, but fast enough to pick up very small particles on the surface and whip them into thick clouds. There are 5 or 6 of them every year. The thing is, they last for months. They cover huge sections of the planet, and they make the atmosphere thick with dust. I still don't see the problem, Annie said. Light, Randall said. The total sunlight reaching the surface is very low in the area of the storm. Right now it's 20% of normal, and Rodney's rover is powered by solar panels. Mitch rubbed his eyes. And we can't warn him. So he gets less power, Annie said. Can't he just recharge longer? The current plan already has him recharging all day long, Venkat explains. With 20% of normal daylight, it'll take 5 times as long to get the same energy. It'll turn his 45 soul trip into 225 souls. He will miss the Hermes flyby. Can't Hermes wait for him? Annie asked. It's a flyby, Venkat said. Hermes isn't going to Martian orbit. If they did, they wouldn't be able to get back. They need their velocity for the return trajectory. After a few moments of silence, Teddy said, We'll just have to hope he finds a way through. We can track his progress and... No, we can't, Mindy interrupted. We can't, Teddy said. She shook her head. The satellites won't be able to see through the dust. Once he enters the affected area, we won't see anything until he comes out the other side. Well, Teddy said, crap. Log entry Sol 439. Before I risk my life with this contraption, I need to test it. And not the little test I've been doing so far. Sure, I've tested power generation, life support, the trailer bubble, and the bread room. But I need to test all aspects of it working together. I'm going to load it up for the long trip and drive in circles. I won't ever be more than 500 kilometers from the hub, so it'll be fine if something breaks. I dedicated today to loading up the rover and trailer for the test. I want the weight to match what will be on the real trip. Plus, if cargo is going to shift around or break things, I want to know about it now. I made one concession to common sense. I left most of my water supply in the hob. I loaded 20 liters, enough for the test but no more. There are lots of ways I can lose pressure in this mechanical abomination I've created, and I don't want all my water to boil off if that happens. On the real trip, I'm going to have 620 liters of water. I made up the weight difference by loading 600 kilograms of rocks in with my other supplies. Back on Earth, universities and governments are willing to pay millions to get their hands on Mars rocks. I'm using them as ballast. I'm doing one more little test tonight. I made sure the batteries were good and full, then disconnected the rover and trailer from the hob power. I'll be sleeping in the hob, but I left the rover's life support on. It'll maintain the air overnight, and tomorrow I'll see how much power it ate up. I've watched the power consumption while it's attached to the hob, and there weren't any surprises. But this will be the true proof. I call it the plugs out test. Maybe that's not the best name. Break. There's another break. The crew of Hermes gathered in the wreck. The REC. Let's get through status quickly, Lewis said. We're all behind in our science assignments. Vogel, you first. I repaired the bad cable on Vasimer 4, Vogel reported. It was our last thick gauge cable. If another such problem occurs, we'll have to braid lower gauge lines to carry the current. Also, the power outlet from the reactor is declining. Johansson, Lewis said. What's the deal with the reactor? I had to dial it back, Johansson said. It's the cooling vanes. They aren't radiating heat as well as they used to. They're tarnishing. How can that happen? Lewis asked. They're outside the craft. There's nothing for them to react with. I think they picked up dust or small air leaks from Hermes itself. One way or another, they're definitely tarnishing. The tarnish is clogging the microlattice, and that reduces the surface area. Less surface area means less heat dissipation, so I limited the reactor enough that we weren't getting positive heat. Any chance of repairing their cooling vanes? It's on the microscopic scale, Johansson said. We need a lab. Usually they replace the vanes after each mission. Will we be able to maintain engine power for the rest of the mission? Yes, if the rate of tarnishing doesn't increase. All right, keep an eye on it. Beck, how's life support? Limping, Beck said. We've been in space way longer than it was designed to handle. There are a bunch of filters that would normally be replaced each mission. I found a way to clean them with a chemical bath I made in the lab, but it eats away at the filters themselves. We're okay right now, but who knows what will break next. We knew this would happen, Lewis said. The design of Hermes assumed it would get an overhaul after each mission, but we've extended Ares 3 from 396 days to 898. Things are going to break. We've got all of NASA to help when that happens. We just need to stay on top of maintenance. Martinez, what's the deal with your bunk room? What's the deal with your bunk room? Martinez furrowed his brow. It's still trying to cook me. The climate control just isn't keeping up. I think it's the tubing in the walls that brings the coolant. I can't get at it because it's built into the hull. We can use the room for storage of non-temperature sensitive cargo, but that's it. So did you move into Mark's room? It's right next to mine, he said. It has the same problem. Where have you been sleeping? In airlock 2. It's the only place I can be without people tripping over me. No good, Lewis said, shaking her head. If one seal breaks, you'll die. I can't think of anywhere else to sleep, he said. The ship is pretty cramped, and if I sleep in the hallway, I'll be in people's way. Okay, from now on, sleep in Beck's room. Beck can sleep with Johansson. Johansson blushed and looked down awkwardly. So, Beck said, you know about that? You thought I didn't? Lewis said. It's a small ship. You're not mad? If it were a normal mission, I would be, Lewis said. But we're way off script now. Just keep it from interfering with your duties, and I'm happy. Million Mile High Club, Martinez said. Nice. Johansson blushed deeper and buried her face in her hands. Oh, they were doing it? What the hell? Interesting. Log entry soul 444. I'm getting pretty good at this. Maybe when this is all over, I could be a product tester for Mars rovers. Things went well. I spent 5 souls driving in circles. I averaged 93 kilometers per soul. That's a little better than I expected. The terrain here is flat and smooth, so it's pretty much a best case scenario. Once I'm going up hills and around boulders, it won't be nearly that good. The bedroom is awesome. Large, spacious, and comfortable. On the first night, I ran into a little problem with the temperature. It was insanely cold. The rover and trader regulate their own temperatures just fine, but things weren't hot enough in the bedroom. The rover has an electric heater that pushes air with a small fan. I don't use the heater itself for anything because the RTG provides all the heat I need, so I liberated the fan and wired it into a power line near the airlock. Once it had power, all I had to do was point it at the bedroom. It's a low-tech solution, but it worked. There's plenty of heat, thanks to the RTG. I just needed to get it evenly spaced out. For once, entropy was on my side. I discovered that raw potatoes are disgusting. When I'm in the hub, I cook my taters using a small microwave. I don't have anything like that in the rover. I could easily bring in the hob's microwave into the rover and wire it in, but the energy required to cook 10 potatoes a day would actually cut into my driving distance. I fell into a routine pretty quickly. In fact, it was hauntingly familiar. I did it for 22 miserable souls on the Pathfinder trip. But this time I had a bedroom, and that makes all the difference. Instead of being cooped up in the rover, I have my own little hob. After waking up, I have a potato for breakfast. Then I deflate the bedroom from the inside. It's kind of tricky, but I worked out how. First, I put on an EVA suit. Then I close the inner airlock door, leaving the outer door, which the bedroom is attached to, open. This isolates the bedroom with me in it from the rest of the rover. Then I tear out the airlock to depressurize. It thinks it's just pumping air out of a small area, but it's actually deflating the whole bedroom. Once the pressure is gone, I pull the canvas in and fold it. Then I detach it from the outer hatch and close the outer door. This is the most cramped part. I have to share the airlock with the entire folded up bedroom while it repressurized. Once I have pressure again, I open the inner door and more or less fall into the rover. Then I stow the bedroom and go back to the airlock for a normal egress to Mars. It's a complicated process, but it detaches the bedroom without having to depressurize the rover cabin. Remember, the rover has all my stuff that doesn't play well with a vacuum. The next step is to gather up the solar cells I laid out the day before and stow them on the rover and trailer. Then I do a quick check on the trailer. I go in through its airlock and basically take a quick look at all the equipment. I don't even take off my EVA suit. I just want to make sure nothing's obviously wrong. Then back to the rover. Once inside, I take off the EVA suit and start driving. I drive for almost 4 hours and then I'm out of power. Once I park, it's back into the EVA suit for me and out to Mars again. I lay the solar panels out and get the batteries charging. Then I set up the bedroom, pretty much the reverse of the sequence I used to stow it. Ultimately, it's the airlock that inflates it. In a way, the bedroom is just an extension of the airlock. Even though it's possible, I don't rapid inflate the bedroom. I did that to test it because I wanted to find where it would leak, but it's not a good idea. Rapid inflation puts a lot of shock and pressure on it. It would eventually rupture. I didn't enjoy that time the Hob launched me like a cannonball. I'm not eager to repeat it. Once the bedroom is set up again, I can take off my EVA suit and relax. I mostly watched crappy 70s TV. I'm indistinguishable from an unemployed guy for most of the day. I followed that process for 4 sols, and then it was time for an air day. An air day turns out to be pretty much the same as any other day, but without the 4-hour drive. Once I set up the solar panels, I fired up the oxygenator and let it work through the backlog of CO2 that the regulator had stored up. It converted all the CO2 to oxygen and used up the day's power generation to do it. The test was a success. I'll be ready on time. Log entry Sol 449. Today's the big day. I'm leaving for Schiaparelli. The rover and trailer are all packed. They've been mostly packed since the test run, but now I even have the water aboard. Over the last few days, I cooked all the potatoes with the Hobbs microwave. It took quite a while because the microwave can only hold 4 at a time. After cooking, I put them back out on the surface to freeze. Once frozen, I put them back in the rover's saddlebags. This may seem like a waste of time, but it's critical. Instead of eating raw potatoes during my trip, I'll be eating cold, pre-cooked potatoes. First off, they'll taste a lot better, but more important, they'll be cooked. When you cook food, the proteins break down, and the food becomes easier to digest. I'll get more calories out of it, and I'll need every calories I can get my hands on. I spent the last several days running full diagnostics on everything. The regulator, oxygenator, RTG, AREC, batteries, rover, life support, in case I need a backup, solar cells, rover computer, airlocks, and everything else with a moving part or electronic component. I even checked each of the motors, 8 in all, 1 for each wheel, 4 on the rover, 4 on the trailer. The trailer's motors won't be powered, but it's nice to have backups. It's all good to go, no problems that I can see. The Hob is a shell of its former self. I've robbed it of all critical components and a big chunk of its canvas. I've looted that poor Hob for everything it could give me, and in return it's kept me alive for 1.5 years. It's like the giving tree. I performed the final shutdown today. Yo. I performed the final shutdown today. The heaters, lighting, main computer, etc. All the components I didn't steal for the trip to Schiaparelli. I could have left them on. It's not like anyone would care, But the original procedure for Sol 31, which was supposed to be the last day of the surface mission, was to completely shut down the Hob and deflate it because NASA didn't want a big tent full of combustible oxygen next to the MAV when it launched. I guess I did the shutdown as an homage to Mission Ares 3 could have been, a small piece that Sol 31 I never got to have. Once I'd shut everything down, the interior of the Hob was eerily silent. I'd spent 449 sols listening to its heaters, vents, and fans, but now it was dead quiet. It was a creepy kind of quiet that's hard to describe. I'd been away from the noises of the Hob before, but always in a rover or an EVA suit, both of which have noisy machinery of their own. But now there's nothing. I never realized how utterly silent Mars is. It's a desert world with practically no atmosphere to convey sound. I could hear my own heartbeat. Anyways, enough waxing philosophical. I'm in the rover right now. That should be obvious with the Hob main computer offline forever. I've got 2 full batteries, all systems are go, and I've got 45 souls driving ahead of me. Shop ready or bust. And that's the end of chapter 22. How many chapters are there? I think. Yeah, I think. 26. So we've got 5 chapters left. Yeah, okay. Fun. I'll probably finish this by like next week, yo.